Hey guys, Mama T here. Happy Friday. This is totally impromptu. I am going to try to do a quick video tutorial on one of the most common issues some of you have with logging in MyFitnessPal and getting your entries as accurate as possible. And it is the dreaded raw weight versus cooked weight. This mostly applies to things like protein, specifically meats, fish, seafood, but it's also really important with things like rice and oats, with vegetables and fruits, although I don't think people cook fruit that much. It does make a difference, but not as big of a difference in your macronutrients and calories when you log them in MyFitnessPal. So the reason why this is important is because when you're looking at meats, for instance, if I take a chicken breast, a 4-ounce chicken breast, and you can test this out so you can actually see it. I will take a chicken breast that is weighed as 4 ounces while it is still raw. Raw means I haven't cooked it yet, in case anybody is confused. Okay, I have a chicken breast that is raw that I place on my food scale while it's still raw. Says 4 ounces on the food scale when I put it on here. When I cook that, bake it, saute it, steam it, boil it, even air fry it, whatever I do with it, once I've cooked it, if I put that same chicken breast on my scale, it's going to weigh less than 4 ounces now that it's cooked, usually around 3, maybe a little under, maybe a little over, depending on how dry you cook your chicken breast. A moister chicken breast is probably going to weigh a little bit more while it's after it's been cooked because it retains water. So meats, seafoods, proteins in general lose water while they're cooking. So if it was 4 ounces raw, it becomes like 3 ounces once it's cooked. Things like ground meats tend to lose a little bit more. So maybe 4 ounces of ground beef before it's cooked may end up being only like 2.5 after it's cooked, because you drain off all the fat, you drain off all the water. So that's the difference, right? When you're logging in MyFitnessPal, you want to log the food in MyFitnessPal the way it was put on your scale. So if I were to take raw meat, this is raw stew meat, and stick it on my scale, raw. And then I put it into MyFitnessPal, assuming I ate this whole package, even if I cook it afterwards. I mean, I hope I'm not eating it raw, right? So if I weighed it before I cooked it, I'm going to log it into MyFitnessPal as raw meat, right? Because the weight I have is while the meat is still raw, not after it's been cooked. Now, the majority of time, I can tell you I personally weigh my meats cooked, because I cook a lot of things in bulk. I cook a bunch of chicken breast, I cook a bunch of shrimp, I keep containers of ground beef in the fridge, I keep containers of cooked rice in the fridge, I even have a container of shrimp, cooked shrimp in the fridge. So when I'm putting meals together, my meats are already cooked. So everything that I log in MyFitnessPal is a cooked weight, right? So you'll see, if you look at MyFitnessPal logs, you'll see shrimp cooked, 4 ounces, or 96% lean ground beef cooked, 4 ounces, or however many ounces that I'm using, right? You will rarely see me log meat as raw, because most people are not weighing their meat before they cook it in their food, because who has time to cook like one chicken breast? I mean, I guess you could if that's what you wanted to do, but if you're doing things the way you probably should, to stay prepared, and your meals and things like that planned ahead, then you're probably cooking some stuff in bulk, and then you're putting your meals together after the stuff has been cooked. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Hopefully this works well. All right, so I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so a lot of you, so here's another really important thing to discuss when we're talking about like raw and cooked meats and things like that. A lot of you like to scan the barcodes, so the barcodes that are on some of your meats. or, you know, like on your foods. You like to scan them, and that's fine, but understand that when you scan that barcode, then, or if you're just looking at the nutrient label on your food, the nutrient label applies to how the food is in the package. For example, the nutrient label here on my stew meat is before it's cooked, right? So it's just going, I know you can't really see that, sorry. It applies to how the nutrient value of this meat in its raw state. So if I scan it, it's going to get logged into MyFitnessPal raw. But if I'm actually weighing it on a scale after it's cooked, those nutrient facts, they don't apply. So let me use another example. All right, so here's a package of cooked shrimp, because my husband loves cooked shrimp. I hate it, I think it's rubbery. And here's a package of raw shrimp. All right, we both like jumbo shrimp. And I'll give you another tip on things like shrimp in the size in a second. But let's just stick with raw and cooked. This is going to be hard to see, but on the raw shrimp, if you look at the nutrient label on the raw shrimp, you probably can't see it, plus it's backwards. You'll notice that it is 100 calories for 4 ounces. That's 100 calories for 4 ounces of raw shrimp. I'm not going to get into the individual macros. Cooked shrimp also says 100 calories. But guess what? That's for 3 ounces of cooked shrimp. So do you see how it's the same amount of shrimp? One is just before I cook it and the other is after. So 4 ounces of raw shrimp becomes 3 ounces of cooked shrimp once it's been cooked. The nutrient labels on both of these packages of shrimp are exactly the same except for the portion size. So, again, raw meats, proteins, seafood, things like that, poultry in general lose weight while they're cooking. So if it was 4 ounces before it was cooked, it becomes 3 ounces after it cooked because it loses water weight. The nutrient value doesn't change, right? So I'm still talking about what was 4 ounces is now 3, still 100 calories regardless. But if I am weighing it after I cook it, so let's say, for example, I want to take this cooked shrimp and do 4 ounces. I have to log it as cooked shrimp. Because if I did 4 ounces and used a raw entry, my macros are off. Because 4 ounces of cooked was probably actually 5.5 to 6 ounces of raw. Okay, that's how that works. So now, if you're scanning labels off of packaging like these, that's totally fine. But just remember, so for instance, if I scan this package of cooked shrimp and then weigh it cooked, log it into MyFitnessPal cooked, I'm good to go. That's all I needed to do. If I scan the package of raw shrimp and then cook it up and then weigh it before I eat it, then what I've scanned is raw weight. That's not going to work. Let me see if I can show you how this looks in MyFitnessPal. So I'm going to use something like, I'll use my ground beef because I use this quite a bit. So I like 96% ground beef, and the nutrients for what's on the package: 4 ounces of raw, 96% ground beef is 140 calories for 4 ounces of raw. Once I cook this up, that's, if I were to take 4 ounces raw, throw it in a pan, cook it up, and then throw it back on the scale, it's probably only going to be about 2.5 to 3 ounces after it's been cooked, okay? Doesn't change the macronutrients, it's just the weight as it applies to the macronutrients, okay? So anyway, 4 ounces of raw ground beef is 140 calories. I can't see, I should have glasses on. 4.5 grams of fat and 24 grams of protein. So I'm going, if I were to scan this, which I'm not going to, I'm going to try to log it while we're doing this here. So I'm going to say 96% lean ground beef raw. So I'm going to select this here. We'll do 4 ounces, add it to my diary. Okay, so you can see this is about what I just said it was on the package. So 147 calories, 25 grams of protein, 5 grams of fat. That's for raw ground beef. Now, if I had put the ground beef after I cooked it, which is usually how I measure things, cooked ground beef, I'm gonna do 96% lean ground beef cooked. And I actually, if any of you actually read the documents that I send, you know I have a lot of meats and things like that already entered in MyFitnessPal that you can use with and it's got CSFP on it. So I'm going to say 4 ounces here of cooked ground beef. And you can see the difference, okay? So here you can see that the calories for 4 ounces raw is 147. The calories for 4 ounces cooked is 173. So the difference of about 3 grams of protein. The fats are about the same. And again, don't get too hung up on the calculations because MyFitnessPal does weird things with half macros and things like that in the background. But the important thing to remember is that 4 ounces raw would become around 3-ish ounces after it's been cooked. So in order to have the right amount of proteins, macronutrients, etc., as you're logging it in MyFitnessPal, the way you enter it in MyFitnessPal has to match the way you put it on the scale, point blank period. If I put it on the scale cooked, when I log into MyFitnessPal, cooked has to be in my entry. If I put the raw meat on the scale, and that's how I'm going to log it into MyFitnessPal, then it should have raw in the entry. Or you can scan the package because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be for the raw entry. So hopefully that helps to make a little bit of sense. The other thing that's kind of important to keep in mind is not just meats, but things like oats and rice. Rice definitely changes, and oats, things like that, they expand. So while meat loses water, so where 4 ounces might become 3 ounces after it's been cooked, with things like rice and oats and other dry grains, they gain water because we're adding water to them as we're cooking them, right? They expand tremendously. So if I were to take a half a cup of dry rice, once I cook it, it becomes, I don't know, like I'm making this up, like 3 cups of cooked rice. So, if it was 4 ounces of dry rice before it was cooked, because, we like to do things in ounces and grams. If it was 4 ounces before I cooked it when it was still dry, it might become 20 ounces or more after it's been cooked. So that's another one that's really, really important. And most people, again, you're probably not weighing, if you're cooking in bulk, like we suggest you do to keep your life easy, and you're not just like willy-nillying meal after, well, let me throw this together and that together, keep cooked food in the fridge. It makes it easier. Put it on your scale as cooked rice, right? And then log it as cooked rice. So let me show you here. Again, I have cooked white rice. I have this in as an entry already. Let's see if it'll come up for me. Here's my center stage entry. This is the one I use all the time. Okay, so again, I'm logging it the way it goes on my scale. If I put that rice on my scale as cooked rice in MyFitnessPal, it should say cooked next to the entry. Okay. Here's another really important tidbit. All right. So it's another thing that I see that really gets people hung up. All right. So these are boneless, skinless chicken breasts. These are boneless, skinless chicken tenderloins. Understand that a chicken breast is a chicken breast no matter how it's cut up. I don't care if it's cut into tenderloins, or if it's the whole freaking breast, or if you cut it into little tiny cubes, okay? Chicken breast is chicken breast. When you're logging in MyFitnessPal, just use a generic chicken breast entry. cooked if you're putting it on the scale after it's being cooked, okay? It doesn't matter if it's a tenderloin, or it doesn't matter what type of breast, what it's been cut up into, it's still a breast, whether it's a tenderloin or breast. Now, if it's a thigh, you have to log it as a thigh. If it's a wing, you have to log it as a wing. If it's, same thing with turkey. If it's breast, log it as breast. If it's, you know, dark meat, log it as dark meat, wing, thigh, so on and so forth. So the type of chicken matters, right? So the part of the chicken that it's coming from matters, but the way it's been cut up, tenderloin or whole breast, does not matter, okay? All right, with red meat, it's important too with red meat, you know, same kind of concept. So the brand itself doesn't necessarily matter, but the type of red meat does, right? So ground, so or where it comes from the cow, I should say, because some is leaner than others. For example, you can't just log generic steak because you had steak. So I'll tell you that like a sirloin, which is about the leanest type of steak, is going to be significantly less calories than a ribeye, which is marbled with fat, and they taste amazing because they have all kinds of fat marbled through them. But we're talking a huge difference in calories, a huge difference in fat content. So you can't just say generic steak. You also just can't say generic ground beef. So typically there's 96, I've seen 95, I've seen 97, I've seen 93, 85. So those are the percent of lean versus fat content. So in a 96% lean ground beef, you're gonna have significantly less fat than in a 85% ground beef. You're gonna have a lot more fat. So when you're logging that in MyFitnessPal, you have to make sure you're logging the type, because your fat content and calories are going to be severely impacted. Again, you know, most of you are slapping that meat on the scale after it's been cooked. So you might wanna log it as, this is stew meat. I might log it as stew meat cooked, versus, you know, just the raw stew meat, or, you know, ribeye cooked, or sirloin cooked, or filet mignon cooked, or, you know, skirt steak, or whatever it is that you're having. So that matters. The brand itself doesn't matter. For example, I use Aldi brand foods, right? So Aldi brand stew meat is not really any different than a Trader Joe's stew meat, or a Whole Foods stew meat, or a Butcher Box stew meat, or a Wegmans stew meat, or wherever you get your stew meat from. 96% lean ground beef is 96% lean ground beef. It doesn't matter if I get it at Aldi or Trader Joe's or Target or wherever I get my 96% lean ground beef. Don't worry about the brand. Log it as a generic entry and just use the same entry over and over again. Then you're not having to worry about it, okay? Chicken breast, another one. It doesn't matter if it's Purdue or Shady Brook Farms or Aldi or mine, or if it's frozen, or if it's, you know, fresh, if it's Kirkwood, or if it's Costco brand, or it doesn't matter. A breast is a breast is a breast is a breast. Just log it as a generic chicken breast. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I could do, I mean, I could put in the name brand if I want to, but it's unnecessary. So, you know, I always recommend you guys use USDA. It's a good generic entry, right? So I could say USDA cooked chicken breast, boneless, can't spell, skinless. That's why I can't, right? So if we're talking about, you know, boneless, skinless chicken breast, 4 ounces, cooked, easy peasy. Now, whether I can use that entry, whether I am using breasts in their entirety, or I'm using the little slivers called tenderloins. 4 ounces is 4 ounces. So whether it's a 4 ounce chicken breast that I've cooked the whole breast and it's 4 ounces on my scale, or I take 2 or 3 tenderloins that also equal 4 ounces cooked, it doesn't matter. So keep your entries super simple. Find generic entries. Don't worry about the name brand when it comes to raw foods, right? So your fresh whole foods, which is mostly what you guys are supposed to be eating anyway. If you're eating a lot of pre-packaged processed foods, okay, well, 1, you shouldn't be, but 2, the brand on those will matter, right? So the brand of crackers or the brand of I don't know, packaged cooked rice or whatever you're using, that will matter. But if you're using straight up whole foods, which is what you should be doing, by the way, your meats, your proteins, your whole grains, your oats, your rice, fruits and vegetables, it doesn't matter. Just find a generic entry. It doesn't have to be the brand name. It doesn't matter if it's Green Giant or the Aldi brand. If it's a canned green bean, it's a canned green bean. They're typically not any different, right? So I do recommend, all right, so, if there is a little bit of a difference, you can check on like brands, if you're just entering canned green beans, generic, or frozen green beans, generic, all of that should be about the same. Most of the brands don't matter. You can always check the label versus what you're logging in MyFitnessPal. But the biggest thing I wanted to get across to you guys today is the whole raw versus cooked, okay? If you're putting your food on the scale after it has been cooked, when you enter it into MyFitnessPal, make sure cooked is in the search term and in the entry that you log in MyFitnessPal, period. If you've put the food on the scale raw, sometimes I weigh my vegetables before I cook them. Zucchini, I'll give you zucchini for instance. Zucchini actually loses quite a bit of water, loses a lot of volume after it's been cooked. So I weigh it before I cook it. So, usually like 150 grams of raw zucchini. So you'll see that in my entries all the time because I weigh it before I throw it on the stove and I saute it. It's my favorite way. After it's cooked, it shrinks down to like maybe 50 grams. Could I log that as 50 grams cooked? Sure. But I've always weighed my zucchini before I cook it. So it's usually about 150 grams pre-cooked weight, and that's how I log it. So rule of thumb, however you put the food on your scale is how it gets logged. Cooked shrimp on the scale, cooked, better be in the entry in MyFitnessPal. Raw shrimp on the scale, raw should be your entry in MyFitnessPal. And I promised you a note on the size of shrimp. It doesn't matter. These are jumbo. I swear to God, by the time I cook up these fucking jumbo shrimp, they're like, not jumbo anymore. It doesn't matter. Just find a generic cooked shrimp. The type doesn't matter so much unless you're getting some like fancy, like Argentinian red shrimp. Might be a little bit different macronutrients than like your typical, just like regular old shrimp. Tiger shrimp, so if it's a very specific type of shrimp, you might want to find the specific entry for that. But in general, if you're just steaming up some generic old shrimp from Aldi or Costco or Wegmans or wherever the fuck you get your shrimp, it's just shrimp. Don't worry about the size. Just put cooked shrimp or raw shrimp, however you're putting it on the scale. The scale is how it goes into MyFitnessPal. Okay, I hope this helped you guys. It is like the most common thing I see in logs, and I feel like I go around in circles with clients. It seems like the hardest thing to understand when you first start logging in MyFitnessPal, but really I think most people are overcomplicating it. It comes down to how it goes on the food scale is the entry you need to find in MyFitnessPal between cooked or raw. Okay. And the difference is because raw food either loses or gains water once it's cooked. So the weight of that is going to change. Therefore, how much it weighs is going to impact the nutrient content based on how you're logging it in MyFitnessPal. So anyway, I hope that this helped you guys. I'm going to post this on the team page. So it's one of our new like benefits for being part of the team. And hopefully this will clear up some confusion, maybe for some of you old hats and definitely for some of you new folks. No matter what you do, get consistent with your logging, okay? First, plan and prepare your meals ahead. Stop trying to eat on the fly. You will, 1, drive yourself nuts. 2, never meet your macros. 3, you're just gonna drive yourself nuts. And it's just too hard to do. Cook your food in bulk, right? Keep containers of meat and seafood and vegetables and things like that in the refrigerator. And then plan it ahead in MyFitnessPal, plug it in. Don't just plan it in your head, plug it into MyFitnessPal, make sure that what you're planning to eat that day actually meets your macro goals, okay? Like don't come at me with your check-in saying, I think I did great on my nutrition this week, and then I look at your logs and you're nowhere near your macros, okay? So I feel like I say this till I'm blue in the face, but make sure you plug it into MyFitnessPal ahead of time and then stick to that. If you deviate from it, make sure you update MyFitnessPal based on what you deviated from. So if you plugged your whole day in and it met your macros perfectly, great. But then your boyfriend's like, hey, let's go out to eat tonight. And you had already planned meal 5 to be whatever. Well, then you got to do some jury rigging, right? Clear out meal 5, look at the menu for where you're going out to eat, and then plan your meal back in there and shuffle your macros around to make sure it fits, right? I mean, it's really that simple. I don't know why everybody struggles so much with planning ahead. Plug your shit into MyFitnessPal ahead of time. You can even send it to me. I tell clients all the time, make yourself a little meal plan in MyFitnessPal, shoot it over to me. I'll take a look at it and be like, yeah, you're missing like 30 grams of carbs. So this doesn't, so add a little bit here or take a little bit away here. Your fats are too high. Try this, try that. Every one of my clients has that option. Some people take me up on it and some wait until check-in. And then I'm like, what happened, right? Okay, so easy peasy. Keep it simple. Stop trying to overcomplicate it. Cooked, raw, makes a difference in how you log it in MyFitnessPal to make sure your entries are consistent and accurate. And then you just use the same foods and the same entries over and over again. So easy. Don't try to find a bunch of different brands and all of these things. Stick to whole foods. Stop eating a lot of processed and prepackaged things because, oh, by the way, and again, this is another thing I say all the time, the nutrition labels, the FDA allows nutrition labels. And in case you don't know what a nutrition label is, you better. This is your nutrition label for commercially processed prepackaged foods. Your crap processed foods that everybody likes to eat, Doritos and whatever the hell. The FDA allows nutrition labels to be up to 20% off, higher or lower. So if you're eating a bunch of that crap, and that's what you're eating all day long, I mean, the occasional, not a big deal. But if your diet is full of that stuff, you could easily be eating too many calories or too little calories because those nutrition labels can be wrong. So anyway, that's a lot of information. The main point of today was cooked versus raw weight, understanding how to log it into MyFitnessPal. Any questions, drop them below. Make sure you reach out because I want to make sure everybody is very clear on this so that we can stop spinning in circles about how to log your food. Anyway, have a great Friday, you guys. Take care. Peace.